You're watching Narrify.
I used to believe relationships were built on mutual respect, invisible threads woven slowly over time through shared experiences, compromises, memories, and trust. I believed that if two people loved each other enough, they would move through challenges as a team, choosing each other every single day. But beliefs are fragile things. They can be rewritten, bent, or shattered by a single moment. And mine unraveled the day my wife looked me directly in the eyes and said a sentence I will never forget. "If you can't handle me spending weekends with my ex, maybe you're not a real man." My name is Aiden Brooks, and for a long time I thought I married my soulmate. Her name is Harper, and she walked into my life in a way that felt like fate, messy, unexpected, and powerful. I met her at a small music cafe downtown. She was sitting alone with a sketchbook, drawing something I couldn't quite see, her hair tied loosely, headphones on, oblivious to the world. I remember staring at her far longer than I should have, drawn by something I couldn't explain. She looked up, saw me staring, smiled, and instead of being embarrassed, she waved me over like we'd already known each other. That was Harper, bold, unpredictable, magnetic. The kind of woman who made you feel like the world spun differently around her. We talked for 3 hours that day. When I asked what she was drawing, she flipped the sketchbook around. It was me. I joked that it was creepy. She laughed, and the rest was history. Our dating life wasn't perfect, but it was passionate. We fought hard, loved harder, and promised each other we'd grow together. Her past relationships were messy, but she always said she'd changed. I believed her. When I proposed after 2 years, she cried and told me I was the first man who made her feel safe. I wore that like a badge of honor. When we married, she said she wanted stability, honesty, and a fresh start. So how did we end up here? How did we go from honeymoon dinners and shared dreams to her defending her ex like he was the one she vowed her life to? It started small, the way all painful things do. A text here, call there, a mention of her ex, Cole, slipping slowly back into conversations. He's going through a rough time. He just needs someone to talk to. He's always been a good friend. You're reading into things too much. Every sentence felt like a small crack in something I thought was solid. I tried to be patient. I tried to trust her. But trust becomes difficult when your wife starts disappearing on weekends and returning home smelling like unfamiliar colognes and excuses. One Friday evening changed everything. Harper came out of the bedroom with a packed overnight bag. I assumed she was going to visit her sister, something she often did, until she casually said, "I'm staying at Cole's place tonight." My heart stopped. "Why?" I whispered. "He's dealing with some emotional stuff. He needs me." "Harper, I'm your husband. You're telling me you're spending the night with your ex?" She rolled her eyes, like I was annoying her. "He's my friend. Don't be insecure." "Insecure?" I repeated, stunned. "Harper, this isn't normal." "Normal?" she snapped. "Who decides what's normal? You're just being controlling." I took a shaky breath. "I'm asking you to respect our marriage." And then she said it, the sentence that would echo in my mind for months. "If you can't handle me spending weekends with my ex, maybe you're not a real man." The room fell silent. Something inside me shifted. It wasn't anger. It wasn't jealousy. It was the realization that the woman standing in front of me didn't see me as her partner anymore. Something had already changed inside her, and I was only now seeing it. She left that night anyway, and that was the beginning of the end. The night Harper walked out with her overnight bag was the first time I felt our marriage slip through my fingers. I stood in the doorway watching her Uber drive off, the taillights shrinking into the dark street until they vanished completely. A strange quietness settled over the house, the kind that doesn't feel peaceful but hollow. I walked back in, sat at the edge of the bed, and stared at the empty pillow beside mine. I kept telling myself she would come back tomorrow morning with a real explanation, an apology, something that made sense. But deep down I already knew the truth. Something in her heart had shifted long before she said the words out loud. She came home the next afternoon, cheerful, humming, acting like nothing had happened. "You're up early," she teased, tossing her bag onto the chair. I didn't answer. She walked into the kitchen, started making coffee, and for a moment, it looked like any normal Saturday morning, except I felt like I was watching a stranger move around my home. "Did you sleep well?" she asked casually. "Harper," I said quietly, "we need to talk." She sighed dramatically, as if I was ruining her mood. "Aiden, please don't start. Don't start," I repeated. "You spent the night at your ex's place. And I told you why," she shot back. "He needed support. You're married," I whispered. "Your support should start here." She slammed the coffee mug on the counter. "You don't get it. Cole is important to me. He always has been. You knew he was part of my past, and I'm not going to erase him just because you're uncomfortable." "But weekends with him?" I asked, my voice cracking. "Sleepovers." She crossed her arms. "You're blowing this out of proportion." "No," I said. "I'm trying to save us." She looked at me with a coldness I had never seen before. A coldness that said she wasn't listening. A coldness that said she had already chosen a side, and it wasn't ours. Over the next few weeks, her behavior grew stranger. She started staying out late, even on weekdays, returning home tired with excuses that didn't match. She spent hours texting someone while smiling at her phone in a way she never smiled at me anymore. She guarded her screen when I walked by. She changed her passcode. She took her phone into the bathroom and shower. She slept facing away from me. And every time I asked if she was okay or if we were okay, she said I was overreacting or being clingy. Clingy. That was a new one. One night I asked if she wanted to go out for dinner like we used to. She said she had plans with friends. But at 11 p.m., I saw a notification light up on her laptop. A message preview from Cole. "Had a great night. Sweet dreams." My stomach sank. My chest tightened. The world around me blurred. The next morning, she brushed past me like I was just another piece of furniture. "I'll be out most of the day," she said, not even making eye contact. "Don't wait up. Harper, are you in love with him?" I finally asked. She froze. Her jaw tightened. She didn't turn around. "Don't ask questions you don't want the answers to," she whispered. And then she left. I stood there for minutes, unable to breathe, trying to understand how the woman who once chose me so fully could now look at me as if I was nothing more than a burden. The next blow came out of nowhere. Her sister, someone she trusted deeply, called me late at night. She sounded hesitant, almost guilty. "Aiden, I don't know how to say this, but Harper isn't being honest with you." My heart dropped. "What do you mean?" "There's something going on with her and Cole. I've seen messages, pictures, conversations she wouldn't want you to know about. I've tried talking to her, but she says it's her life and she doesn't owe anyone explanations." My legs gave out. I sat on the floor. "What kind of messages?" "Nothing graphic," she said quickly. "Just emotional, intimate, more than friends. A lot more." I closed my eyes. Her sister continued, her voice soft. "Aiden, I'm telling you because you deserve to know. You've always treated her well. You didn't deserve this." I hung up the phone and sat there for nearly an hour, staring at the floor. Everything around me felt unreal, like waking up in someone else's nightmare and not being able to escape. The next morning, Harper confronted me angrily. "Did you talk to my sister?" she demanded. "She reached out to me," I said. "She's worried." "Well, she needs to mind her business," Harper snapped. "Our marriage is our marriage." "You mean what's left of it?" I whispered. She turned away sharply. "You're pathetic when you talk like this. The woman I married would never have said that. The woman she was becoming said it with ease." That night, she left again, without explanation, without apology, without even pretending to care. And that was the moment I realized I wasn't losing her. I had already lost her long before she admitted it. The night Harper didn't come home at all was the night everything inside me finally snapped. Not in anger, not in violence, but in clarity. It was a Saturday, one of the weekends with friends, She claimed she needed to clear her mind. I didn't push. I didn't argue. I just watched her leave with that same overnight bag she never bothered to hide anymore. She didn't kiss me goodbye. She didn't even look back. The door closed softly, and with it, so did the last piece of denial I'd been holding on to. I sat on the couch for hours, staring at our wedding photo. Two people smiling with their whole hearts, believing the world was theirs. I didn't recognize either one anymore. The version of her I married no longer existed, and the version of me she loved was slowly dying under the weight of her indifference. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Aiden, I think you should know where she is tonight. My stomach tightened. Before I could reply, another message came in, a location pin. Not the cafe she claimed she was at. Not her sister's place. Not a friend's apartment. It was Cole's address. My hands shook, but not from anger. From understanding. From the sudden realization that I was the only one still pretending this marriage had a pulse. I didn't go there. I wasn't going to chase her. I wasn't going to humiliate myself by standing outside someone else's door. Instead, I sat in the living room through the night. Lights off, thoughts loud, heart numb. The sunrise came slowly, painting the walls gold. A new day. Another day she hadn't come home. Around 9 a.m., the door finally opened. Harper walked in looking exhausted but strangely calm. She didn't sneak in. She didn't look guilty. She dropped her bag, removed her shoes, and stretched like she'd had a long, restful night. "You're still awake?" she asked casually. I looked at her for a long time, not as my wife, not as the woman I loved, but as someone who no longer belonged in my life. "Where were you?" I asked, my voice steady. She sighed like I was being dramatic. "I told you. Out. At Cole's." I asked. Her expression changed, just slightly. A flicker of surprise. Then annoyance. "Who told you that?" she demanded. "That's not the point," I said. "Were you there?" She shrugged. "As if it doesn't matter," she said. "Why are you so obsessed? Why can't you trust me?" "Trust," I whispered. "Trust disappeared the moment you started disappearing." She rolled her eyes. "Here we go again. Harper," I said quietly. "Are you in a relationship with him?" Silence. A silence that told the truth before her voice did. Finally, she whispered, "I don't know. I don't know. Not no. Not never. Not you're the only one. Just I don't know." My heart broke in a slow, painful way. Not a sudden crack, but a quiet tear that spread through everything I thought we were. I nodded slowly. "Thank you for finally being honest." She frowned like she didn't understand. "Aiden, don't be dramatic. We're just going through a rough patch." "No," I said calmly. "You're going through whatever you're going through. I'm surviving it." She sat on the couch, rubbing her forehead. "You're making this so hard." "I'm making it hard?" I repeated, stunned. "I'm just asking my wife not to choose her ex over her husband." She looked up, eyes tired. "Aiden, he understands me in ways you don't." There it was. The truth. The cut that went the deepest. I swallowed hard. My voice barely held together. "So what am I to you now?" She didn't answer. Instead, she whispered something colder than betrayal itself. "I don't know what I want anymore." For a few seconds I felt nothing. No anger. No sadness. No shock. Just emptiness. The calm that comes after a long fight you no longer have the strength to continue. I stood up, grabbed my keys and walked toward the door. "Where are you going?" she asked, standing quickly. "To breathe," I said. "Something I haven't done in months." "Aiden, don't walk away from me." I paused at the door. "I'm not walking away," I said softly. "I'm finally letting go." And I left. Outside, the air felt sharper, cleaner, almost painful against my lungs, but real. For the first time in a long time I wasn't suffocating under her choices. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay in that house anymore. Not with someone who didn't choose me. Not with someone who expected me to accept disrespect as love. Not with someone who weaponized my loyalty against me. And that was the day our marriage began to end. Not with yelling. Not with accusations. Not with revenge. But with quiet truth. You can't save someone who doesn't want to stay. I drove for hours that day, not because I had anywhere to be, but because movement felt easier than sitting still with everything collapsing inside me. The roads blurred past, streetlights washed through the windshield in streaks of gold and white, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I allowed myself to feel everything. The heartbreak, the humiliation, the fear, the confusion, the grief of losing someone who was still very much alive. By evening, I found myself parked at a viewpoint overlooking the city. Couples walked by. Friends laughed. Strangers lived their lives unaware that a man sitting in a silent car was watching his entire world come apart. Sat there until the sun disappeared and the city lights replaced it. When I finally returned home, I didn't expect Harper to be waiting, but she sat on the couch, arms folded tightly, as if she'd been rehearsing a speech she didn't know how to deliver. "Aiden," she said weakly, "we need to talk." I nodded and sat on the opposite chair, the air heavy with everything we'd avoided for months. "I don't want us to fall apart," she whispered. "We already have," I said gently. She flinched, then lowered her gaze. "I made mistakes. Harper, this isn't about one mistake. This is about choices you kept making even when you saw me breaking." Her eyes filled with tears. "I didn't mean to hurt you. But you did," I said softly. "Over and over." She wiped her face. "I just felt confused. Cole and I have history. When he came back into my life, it woke things up I didn't know I still felt." I stayed silent. She continued, "I kept thinking I could balance both. That you'd understand. That it didn't change how I felt about you. But it did," I said. "It changed everything." She nodded slowly. Then, with trembling hands, she pulled a stack of printed messages from her bag. "These are my conversations with him. No hiding." I read them, nothing explicit, but deeply emotional, intimate messages about her frustrations, her reliance on him, her feelings of confusion, her longing, and the worst line of all: "Sometimes I feel like the person I'm supposed to be with isn't the one I married." I set the papers down, my voice steady even if my heart wasn't. "Harper, this wasn't confusion. This was a choice." She broke down, reaching for my hand, but I pulled away. "I can't do this anymore," I said quietly. "No," she cried. "Please don't leave. I can fix this. I'll cut him off. I'll go to therapy. Don't give up on me." I shook my head. "You didn't lose me today. You lost me the day you told me my feelings didn't matter." She collapsed into sobs. "I'm sorry." "I'm so sorry." I stood up. "I believe you. But sorry doesn't rebuild trust. Sorry doesn't undo months of emotional betrayal. Sorry doesn't fix the part of me that died waiting for you to choose me." She looked up with broken eyes. "I love you. I know you did," I said. "But love without respect is just a word." I packed my suitcase while she begged and cried. But I didn't yell. I didn't break. When I reached the door, she grabbed my arm. "Aiden, please don't leave like this." I looked at her one last time. "You told me that if I couldn't handle you spending weekends with your ex, I wasn't a real man. But a real man doesn't stay where he's disrespected. A real man doesn't beg to be chosen. A real man protects his peace. And today, imkosing mine." Her knees buckled, and she sobbed on the floor as I walked out of the home we once dreamed in, closing the door gently behind me. No slamming. No yelling. No final blow. Just peace, the kind that comes after a long storm. 6 months later, I rented a small apartment across town. Quiet, sunlight-filled, peaceful. And even though healing wasn't easy, with some nights where the silence felt unbearably loud and days where I replayed everything wondering where it truly went wrong, I rebuilt myself slowly, day by day. I focused on work, reconnected with friends, went to therapy, and learned that losing someone you thought was forever doesn't mean losing yourself. One evening, Harper sent a long email, not to win me back or manipulate, but to genuinely apologize. telling me, "You were the best thing that ever happened to me," and I ruined it by chasing something that never deserved space in my life. I didn't reply, not out of anger but out of closure, because the person I had become no longer needed an apology to move forward. I had already forgiven her quietly, not to save us, but to save myself.